major events that occurred demonstrate just how radical and how dangerous the Democrat Party has become. Now, I know it sounds very hyperbolic, but bear with me. The evidence is mounting that Joe Biden's party, from elders to organizers, has adopted a by any means necessary approach to winning in November. And the consequences for America will be devastating in both the short and long term. First, if you thought that we could find bipartisan agreement that rioting should never be tolerated, think again. In fact, there seems to be an implicit consensus among Democrats today that efforts should not be made to stop federal buildings from arson, or even to stop attacks on law enforcement at all. At the disgraceful inquisition of AG Bill Barr this week, Democrat members of Congress gave cover to actual criminals and treated Barr like he was the problem.
Shame on you, Mr. Barr.
Can I just say, Mr.
Shame on you.
I think it's a very important non-lethal option.
For protesters?
No, for rioters.
That was my question. For protesters.
Numerous media reports have confirmed. Mr. Barr, excuse me, this is my time. Sir,
I don't think that what was happening immediately around the courthouse was a peaceful protest.
That's not my question, Mr. Barr.
Well, that's where that...
My question is, do you think as the chief, reclaiming my time,
Every American who votes in November should understand that the Democrat Party will allow total mayhem to go unchecked and life's work destroyed if perpetrators are anti-Trump. So if you have the right motives, they'll leave you alone. Now, we learned that in New York alone, at the height of its protests, about $1 million in damage was done just to the police cars that were destroyed. And the damage to businesses was likely in the tens of millions. The city's a total hellhole now, with skyrocketing crime, including murder rate going way up. Cuomo and Blasio are a duo of disaster. But they don't care. It's all about amassing more power for them, more control for them, and hurting the president's chances for re-election. Now, another indication that the Democrats have gone totally nutso is their feigned hyperventilation yesterday about Trump's tweet about mail-in voting and this question of delaying the election. Now, they all know he doesn't have the power to do that, nor was he even saying that he'd really try to do that. For good reason, the president believes, though, that mail-in voting would be a nightmare that would end up delaying election results for weeks, even months. And that's what the Democrats themselves have repeatedly said.
We are working to, prepare all of you and the public with, to not get the results immediately upon polls closing on election night. It very well may take several more days.
The Democrats are madly pushing mail-in voting for one reason. They think it would help them beat Trump. They know, and they don't even care that it can lead to fraud and corruption. And there are already plenty of examples of this, including most recently in New Jersey. But Democrats are fine with millions of untrackable and sometimes untraceable mail-in ballots floating around, undermining the integrity of our entire electoral system, causing confusion, instability, and even violent unrest for days or weeks after Election Day. For them, it just ends up being another insurance policy to help Biden. Thirdly, it's obvious that the Democrats, including Biden, want America to shut down again with newer and even more draconian controls over your movement.
You can't get this country going again unless you get COVID under control.
We cannot expect to reopen the economy safely if the virus is spreading unchecked.
Dr. Fauci, can you help us understand why? While Europe has largely contained the virus,
when they shut down or locked down or went to shelter in place, however you want to describe it, they really did it to the tune of about 95+%.
You see, that's what we should have done. We should do it now. Just shut it all down. Everyone stays inside, waits for their mailbox money. Well, our terrible GDP numbers released this week for the second quarter are due entirely to unemployment, and of course, that's caused by the shutdowns. Consumer confidence is in the toilet. Kids will be stuck at home looking at screens in much of America this fall, hurting them and their families. But the Democrats just consider it all necessary collateral damage on the way to, they hope, defeating Donald Trump. Oh, and by the way, The Eurozone released its numbers today, and they're in a full-blown recession, the worst on record. France's economy shrank by nearly 14% in the second quarter. Spain fared even worse. Their GDP contracted nearly 19%. That's double what we lost. But Democrats consider all of this a success story? And finally today, this took the cake. Senate Democrats left town rather than agree to a short-term extension of unemployment benefits proposed by Republicans. And even CNN couldn't spin the Democrats' behavior.
While there were some offers from the White House to temporarily extend this extra $600 a week benefit that so many people are depending on, the Democrats didn't agree to that. The fear is that if you let this go as a standalone bill, you lose leverage in future negotiations.
Leverage? Did you hear that? Leverage. These are real people's real lives at stake. So instead of acting in the nation's best interest, Democrats are willing once again to see needless pain inflicted on American citizens. Because you see, human suffering to them is useful if it gets them closer to their socialist utopia of a massive increase in people dependent on the government and a massive increase in state control over every aspect of our lives. Every step of the way, we see Democrats choose chaos over common sense. They're okay with trashing the country's economy, taxpayer property, and our history. They're fine with denigrating cabinet members as part of a show for the cameras. And they're even okay with hurting children by peddling false panic about school reopenings. And finally, they'll let you twist in the wind instead of working with Republicans. This entire year has been a post-impeachment revenge quest for Democrats. And they only hate Trump, remember, because they hate the America that elected him. They need that America to get so demoralized that they stop fighting for their own lives and liberty. But they've made a very risky bet with this course they're on, and they've gone all in. But so must we. We owe that much to our children, our grandchildren, and to those who came before us. So let's stop complaining and start doing. Register people to vote and educate everyone who'll listen. I promise. I'm going to do my part. And that's the angle.